Let me start with something that frustrates me more than almost anything in personal finance. I constantly see people jumping into the stock market, buying random stocks, experimenting with crypto, or chasing the next big investment trend, while at the same time they're drowning in credit card debt that's charging them over 20% interest every single year. Think about that for a second. It's like trying to fill a swimming pool while someone has opened the drain at the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it keeps disappearing. Yet this exact situation is happening in millions of households. My name is Donkey, and I spend an unusual amount of time thinking about money, investing strategies, and why so many people accidentally sabotage their own financial future. Not because they're lazy or careless, but because nobody ever teaches them the correct order in which money decisions should be made. Most people treat investing like a game of excitement. They want to talk about which stock might explode next year or whether cryptocurrency will make them rich. But what they don't realize is that building wealth has far less to do with picking the perfect investment and far more to do with following the right sequence of financial steps. If the order is wrong, even smart investments can fail to move you forward. Imagine constructing a house. You wouldn't start by installing expensive lighting fixtures or decorating the living room before the foundation is poured and the walls are stable. But financially, people do this every day. They start investing before their finances are stable, before their safety nets exist, and before their debt is under control. The result is predictable. Progress feels slow, stress stays high, and money never seems to work the way it should. But the truth is, there actually is a logical order for building wealth. A step-by-step structure that protects you from financial disasters while allowing your money to grow faster over time. And once you understand that order, everything about investing starts to make a lot more sense. Before we talk about investing even a single dollar, we need to address something that most people completely overlook: financial stability. Because no investment strategy in the world will work if your financial life is constantly being disrupted by unexpected problems. This is where the idea of an emergency fund comes in. I know. The moment people hear the words emergency fund, their eyes glaze over. It sounds boring. It doesn't feel exciting like buying stocks or watching your portfolio go up and down every day. But in reality, this single step might be one of the most powerful financial moves you'll ever make. Life has a strange habit of throwing surprises at us. Cars break down, medical bills appear out of nowhere, jobs get lost, or something important in the house suddenly needs fixing. And when these things happen without a financial buffer, people are forced to make terrible decisions. They swipe a credit card, take expensive loans, or worse, they sell their investments at the worst possible moment. An emergency fund protects you from those situations. It's not just about having money saved, it's about having peace of mind. When you know you have a financial cushion, you stop panicking every time life throws a small problem your way. That psychological comfort alone can change how you make money decisions. Now, the big question everyone asks is simple: how much should you actually save? You've probably heard the traditional advice: 3 to 6 months of living expenses. But for many people, that number feels overwhelming at the beginning. So instead of thinking about the final destination, it's better to break it into smaller milestones. Start by saving your first $1,000 as quickly as possible. That small amount can already handle many minor emergencies. Once that's done, focus on building up to 1 full month of living expenses. And from there, slowly grow it toward 3 months or more depending on your situation. It may not sound exciting, but this step quietly builds the financial safety net that everything else will rely on. Something interesting happens once people build even a small emergency fund. Their entire relationship with money starts to change. Instead of feeling like one unexpected expense could completely ruin them, they finally have breathing room. And that breathing room is incredibly powerful. Research in behavioral finance has shown that people with even a modest financial cushion tend to make smarter long-term decisions. When you're constantly stressed about money, your brain focuses on survival, not strategy. But once you have a safety net, you can start thinking about the future instead of just the next bill. But here's where the next big step becomes important. After your emergency fund is in place, the worst financial enemy you need to deal with is high-interest debt. And I'm talking specifically about things like credit card balances that are charging interest rates of 18%, 20%, or sometimes even higher. That kind of debt is incredibly dangerous for your financial future. Why? Because interest at that level grows extremely fast, much faster than most normal investments can grow. If your credit card company is charging you 22% interest every year, it means your debt is growing at a rate that even many professional investors struggle to beat consistently. So imagine this situation. You invest money in the stock market hoping to earn around 8% or 10% per year. But at the same time, your credit card balance is quietly growing at more than double that rate. Even if your investments perform well, the debt is still pulling you backward. It's like trying to climb up a hill while someone is pulling you down with a rope tied to your waist. That's why eliminating high-interest debt becomes the next critical step in building a strong financial foundation. When it comes to getting rid of high-interest debt, the goal is simple. Stop the financial bleeding as quickly as possible. Every month that debt sits there collecting interest, it quietly drains money that could have been building your future instead. Think about it this way. If a credit card charges you 20% interest, paying it off is essentially the same as earning a guaranteed 20% return on your money. And opportunities like that are extremely rare in the investment world. Most long-term stock market investors are happy if they average 7% to 10% per year. But eliminating high-interest debt gives you a return that's not only higher, it's also completely risk-free. There are two common strategies people use to attack their debt. The first one is called the debt avalanche method. With this strategy, you list all your debts and focus your extra payments on the one with the highest interest rate while continuing minimum payments on the rest. Once the highest interest debt disappears, you move to the next one. Mathematically, this method saves the most money over time. The second approach is the debt snowball method. Instead of focusing on interest rates, you pay off the smallest balances first. Each time a debt disappears, it creates a small psychological win that keeps people motivated to continue. Both methods can work, but the avalanche approach is usually the most efficient if your goal is minimizing interest costs. However, there's one surprising exception to the rule of paying off debt before investing. In a very specific situation, it can actually make sense to invest while you're still paying down debt. And understanding this exception can make a huge difference in how fast your wealth grows. That exception appears when your employer offers something called a retirement match. Many companies provide this benefit through workplace retirement plans, and surprisingly, a huge number of employees either ignore it or don't fully take advantage of it, which is basically the same as refusing free money. Here's how it usually works. Your employer might promise to match a percentage of the money you contribute to your retirement account. A very common example is a 50% match on the first 6% of your salary that you invest. Let's say you earn $50,000 per year. If you contribute 6% of your salary, that's $3,000 going into your retirement account. But because of the employer match, the company might add another $1,500 on top of that. So with one simple contribution, you instantly turn $3,000 into $4,500. That's an immediate 50% return on your money before the investments even begin to grow. Very few financial opportunities offer anything close to that kind of guaranteed benefit. This is why employer matching sits in a special category within the financial roadmap. Even if someone still has high-interest debt, it often makes sense to contribute at least enough to capture the full employer match. The key word here is enough. You don't necessarily need to maximize your entire retirement account yet. The priority is simply contributing the minimum amount required to receive the full matching contribution. Once that free money is secured, any additional income can go back toward aggressively paying down debt. Another detail many people overlook is something called a vesting schedule. Some companies require employees to stay for a certain number of years before the employer contributions officially belong to them. Understanding those rules can help you make smarter long-term decisions. But even with vesting requirements, Employer matching remains one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available early in the financial journey. Once you've built an emergency fund, removed high-interest debt, and secured your employer's retirement match, your financial foundation finally becomes strong enough to move into the next stage. This is where many people start making smarter investing decisions, but it's also where confusion usually begins. The next step focuses on something called tax-advantaged accounts. Taxes quietly eat a large portion of investment returns over time. Every year that your investments produce dividends, interest, or capital gains, the government takes a percentage. It might not seem like a big deal in the short term, but over decades those taxes can significantly slow down how fast your money compounds. That's why certain investment accounts were created to give people tax benefits. And if you use them correctly, they can dramatically improve your long-term results. One of the most flexible options is an individual retirement account, often called an IRA. Unlike many workplace retirement plans that limit your investment choices, an IRA usually gives you the freedom to select from thousands of different funds, ETFs, and other investments. This flexibility matters more than most people realize. Many employer retirement plans only offer a small list of investment options, and some of those funds charge relatively high management fees. Over long periods of time, even a small difference in fees can reduce your final portfolio value by tens of thousands of dollars. With an IRA, investors often choose low-cost index funds that track the overall market while keeping expenses extremely small. Lower costs mean more of your money stays invested and continues compounding for your future. Because of that control and efficiency, maximizing your IRA contributions becomes an important step before increasing many other types of investments. When opening an IRA, investors quickly run into an important decision that can shape their tax situation for decades. The choice usually comes down to two main types of accounts: traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. Both accounts allow your investments to grow over time, but the way taxes are handled is completely different. A traditional IRA gives you a tax break today. The money you contribute can often be deducted from your current taxable income, which means you may pay less tax this year. However, when you eventually withdraw that money in retirement, the withdrawals are taxed as regular income. A Roth IRA works in the opposite way. You contribute money that has already been taxed, so there's no immediate tax deduction. But in return, your investments grow tax-free. And when you withdraw the money in retirement, you won't owe any taxes on those gains. So the big question becomes simple. Is it better to pay taxes now or later? If someone expects their income, and therefore their tax bracket, to be higher in the future, paying taxes now through a Roth account can be very beneficial. On the other hand, people who are currently earning their highest salaries might prefer the tax deduction that comes with a traditional IRA. The challenge is that predicting future tax rates is incredibly difficult. No one truly knows what tax laws will look like decades from now. Because of this uncertainty, many investors choose a balanced approach by using both types of accounts over time. This strategy creates tax flexibility later in life, allowing retirees to control how and when their income gets taxed. But just when it seems like retirement accounts couldn't get any more interesting, there's another option that many people completely overlook, and it might actually offer even more tax advantages. That overlooked option is something called a health savings account, often shortened to HSA. At first glance, most people assume it's just a simple account used to pay medical bills. But in reality, it can quietly become one of the most powerful long-term investment tools available. What makes an HSA special is that it offers a rare combination of tax benefits that very few financial accounts provide. First, the money you contribute can reduce your taxable income, which means you may pay less in taxes today. Second, once the money is inside the account, it can be invested and allowed to grow over time without being taxed each year. And third, when you withdraw the money for qualified medical expenses, those withdrawals are completely tax-free. So in simple terms, you receive tax advantages when the money goes in, while it grows, and when it comes out. However, there is one requirement. To open and contribute to an HSA, you must be enrolled in a high-deductible health insurance plan. These plans typically have lower monthly premiums, but require you to pay more out of pocket before insurance coverage begins. For people who are generally healthy and don't visit the doctor frequently, this setup can work very well. It allows them to keep medical costs manageable while also using the HSA as a long-term investment vehicle. One particularly clever strategy many investors use is paying current medical bills out of their regular cash instead of withdrawing money from the HSA. By doing this, the money inside the HSA stays invested and continues growing for many years. And since medical expenses tend to increase later in life, having a tax-free pool of money. There is another remarkable feature of health savings accounts that many people don't fully understand. Unlike some retirement accounts that force you to use the money within certain time limits, HSAs allow extreme flexibility when it comes to reimbursing yourself for medical expenses. Here is a strategy that long-term planners sometimes use. When you pay for a medical expense today, you don't have to immediately withdraw money from your HSA. Instead, you can save the receipt and allow your HSA investment to continue growing. Years later, even decades later, you can reimburse yourself tax-free as long as the expense was considered qualified under HSA rules. This means the HSA can function almost like a hidden investment reservoir that you can tap when needed. Another advantage appears after age 65. At that point, the rules become more flexible. You can withdraw money from the HSA for non-medical purposes as well, although those withdrawals may be subject to income tax similar to a traditional retirement account. However, if the money is used for healthcare expenses, the withdrawals remain completely tax-free. Considering that healthcare costs are one of the biggest financial risks during retirement, this feature makes HSAs uniquely valuable. Financial experts sometimes describe HSAs as a triple tax advantage account because they combine tax deductions, tax-free growth, and tax-free medical withdrawals. If someone is eligible, consistently maximizing HSA contributions each year and investing the balance for the long term can potentially build hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax-advantaged savings. But after optimizing all these tax-advantaged accounts, there is still one final stage in the wealth-building sequence where many people eventually arrive. And that stage is where true investment freedom begins. The last stage in the optimal wealth-building sequence is taxable investment accounts. Unlike retirement accounts or HSAs, taxable accounts have no contribution limits and no withdrawal restrictions, giving you complete flexibility. This is where you can invest in individual stocks, ETFs, real estate funds, or even experiment with cryptocurrency. But here's the catch. Taxable accounts also come with taxes biting into your returns. Dividends, interest, and capital gains are all subject to taxation each year. That tax drag may seem small at first, but over decades, it can significantly reduce your final portfolio value. For example, investing $10,000 annually for 30 years in a tax-advantaged account earning 7% might grow to nearly $944,000. The same contributions in a taxable account, taxed along the way, could end up closer to $700,000. That's almost $250,000 lost simply to taxes. Despite this, taxable accounts are incredibly valuable once you've maxed out your emergency fund, eliminated high-interest debt, captured your employer match, and fully utilized tax-advantaged accounts like IRAs, 401(k), and HSAs. They provide liquidity for goals outside retirement, like buying a home, starting a business, or funding early retirement. They also allow you to leave a legacy for your heirs without worrying about certain retirement account rules, thanks to the step-up in basis that reduces capital gains taxes. Following this exact sequence, emergency fund, high-interest debt, employer match, IRA, HSA, max 401(k), and finally taxable accounts, ensures your money works smarter, not harder. It's not flashy or exciting at first, but the results compound over time. By respecting this order, you build a strong financial foundation that protects you from mistakes, maximizes your returns, and ultimately accelerates your path to financial independence. Do this consistently, and your future self will thank you. While everyone else chases TH.